Welcome to The Higher View, where we share hot topics and current events from a higher perspective. With your hosts, Victoria Reynolds, Kathy Mason, Geraldine Orozco, Goddess Gloria, and Joan of Angels. Now, let's get this show started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Higher View. Hi, ladies. Welcome back to the show. Everyone who's watching, we had intended to do this topic last week before Valentine's Day, and a whole lot of us actually had other shows we were doing. So we decided to hold this topic off for this week for post-Valentine's Day. And today we are talking about the courage to love and the lessons that come from the heart and the lessons that come from really having this willingness to open our heart up to others. So we're talking today about relationships with other people, relationships with ourselves, and the courage that it takes to really be willing to step out of our comfort zone and have those relationships, and what it means to have a truly loving relationship with others and a truly loving relationship with ourselves. And as we all know, I'm thinking back to that first time I had my heart broken. I have two teenagers, and I think about, if they ever find love and have their heart broken that first time, how incredibly painful it is for everyone. And all the times that we have these relationships with others outside of ourselves, what does that mean? How does that express in our hearts? And what does it look like when our love for others is genuine and unconditional? What does it look like to have a genuinely loving, unconditional relationship with ourselves? And there's a misunderstanding between the difference of self-love and arrogance. What does that look like? And so this topic around Valentine's Day is all about what love really is. And why it's so important to the human heart to express and feel love back and forth, have that core need that exists within every human being and actually exists in all things. Animals want to feel love too. It is a necessary part of the entire life experience to feel and express love. So what does that look like, and why is that so important for a human experience as we incarnate in this human form? And so this is a topic, as a topic we could probably all talk about every week for years, because it's such an important topic. And so today we're having this conversation really because it's been Valentine's Day and the relationship we have with others, and what do our best relationships look like, and what role do we play in the relationships that we've had. And I'll come out and be completely transparent that for me, I'm recently divorced. I just got divorced about a year and a half ago after being with my husband for almost 30 years. It was a very difficult and painful decision to end that relationship. But what came through for me is that in order for me to have a more loving relationship with myself and who I'm here to be, I needed to let go of my entanglements with my husband, as I call him. And we had a beautiful relationship. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. There were things that needed to be worked out, and there were things about him that he needed to work through, and there were things about me that I needed to move forward for. We essentially outgrew each other spiritually. And so it's really important to not have any guilt or shame around those choices to have a more loving relationship with yourself, because ultimately that's the most important thing. So, you know what, before we get started, I'm going to have Goddess Gloria come in and tell a couple of jokes to get the day started. She's our resident comedian. So Goddess Gloria, take it away.
Oh my goodness. Good morning, everyone. And Goddess Victoria, you put me on the spot. So I'm going to share the same joke with you with everyone that I shared with you, beautiful goddesses, this morning. And so if we could all pop back on the screen so we can get reactions, that would be beautiful. Thank you so much. Here we go. What is the difference between a girlfriend and a wife?
What is the difference between a girlfriend and a wife?
45 pounds. Now, what is the difference between a husband and a boyfriend?
What?
45 minutes.
That's great. That's funny. And I think we've all had experience with that. I know that for me, it probably was about 45 pounds. And I managed to drop most of those in the last year and a half.
Those are good stereotypes.
Honestly.
And I think it's important, especially when we go towards love, to find the light side of it, to find the fun side of it. If we try to make it all serious, that's when we create problems. But if we make it fun and find the fun sides of it, it gives us another dynamic in love.
Yep,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Joan, you had something you wanted to say?
Well, I find it really interesting that we're joking about something that really is sad. I mean, it's a symbol, yes, the weight gain, but it's a symbol that love is one thing, but relationships are completely a different topic. In fact, I don't even know if we can have the same topic. So when we get into relationships, we get 45 pounds or, 45 minutes. But when we're in love, we're in a whole different aspect. And that's what the joke really hit me at, as how sad that we actually, there's a difference between love and relationships. They don't always manifest the same way. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. You know what? It's interesting. So there's a word that's going around the younger generation right now. It's called shipping. And it's referred to relationships, but really shipping in itself is about friendship, relationship, partnership. And I think in the younger crowd, they think of it only in like a sexual relationship, but shipping really encompasses all of the relationships that we have in every area of our life. And how can we, we're talking more about the romantic relationship with regard to Valentine's Day, but how can we bring love into all of our relationships? Even we think, we're having a relationship with our coworkers, we're having relationships with our bosses. For those of us that actually are our own boss, we're having a relationship with our boss, with a relationship with ourselves. So, like I said, this actually could turn into a much bigger topic. Although today we're pretty much focusing on, because it is Valentine's Day, having a more intimate relationship with the people in our lives, the Valentines in our lives, and even the relationship that we have with ourselves. So for me, my Valentine this year was myself. I mean, I bought cards and some candy for my kids, but it was really about having a romantic, in a sense, not the sexual relationship with myself, but a more loving, unconditionally looking in the mirror and saying, man, I love me. This is so great. Because for years I looked in the mirror and I despised myself. I hated myself so much I wanted to kill myself. So to have a loving relationship with yourself, to me, is the most important relationship in the world, because our relationships with other people are always an extension of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so that's kind of a massive awareness I had for myself about 10 years ago, that if I wanted to have better external relationships, I needed to heal the relationship with myself. Kathy, do you have something you want to speak to on that? Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Okay, a couple things. Last year I had a Valentine, and this year I didn't. And it also snowed here on Valentine's, so it wasn't a day to go out and do things. But I wanted to say a couple things. I think the opportunity for us to talk about self-love is going to come up lots of times on these shows, because if we can't love ourselves, if we don't have the worldview that the universe is conspiring for us, then we've got a lot more of a road to hoe, if you want to, use a gardening term. It's a lot tougher of a journey. Adversity, I've written this quote, adversity is here to initiate us into greatness. And when we think about the relationships we've had, and if we're not still in those relationships, we think about the love part, the magical, mystical beginnings, but the endings actually told us a lot about ourselves. And using that adversity, which was the whether you're compromising too much, or you're actually losing yourself, because the programming is the woman behind the man kind of thing. There's all of those things, but if we're to initiate greatness, contrast is necessary for us to get to the next level. The other thing, I still want to go back to that worldview, that if everything's done here for us, that our soul really wants to connect with us, it has to be at a higher vibe, number one, which is of joy and happiness and love. But it also has to be that when you look at something that you find it adverse, that you try to find the gift in it. Because otherwise you get the lesson again and again until you see the gift. So it's in a lot of ways it's an unwrapping. But I do want to say that I do believe the universe is conspiring, that the unseen field is full of potential and love, and we're supposed to co-create with it. But again, we're still learning how to love ourselves so we could even be that in a relationship. And also we're learning that how to dance together. And I think we're learning how to do that in every level. They're saying that in the Aquarian age, we're going to become peaceful. And, Geraldine will probably be able to talk to this about meditation and the peace you get. But how can we be peaceful with ourselves and others in every relationship, which is what you were talking about, Victoria? So, but yeah. I think you have to start with, do you think it's a safe place here or not? And
yeah. Well, I think the key first is to find that safety within ourselves. And it's interesting because I look back at the relationships that I've had, and so for me, because I had such a long relationship, almost 30 years with my husband, that looking at the different phases of transition throughout our entire relationship, and a big part for me was looking at the relationship and seeing who I was in the relationship, that the safety in the relationship was actually needed to come through me first. But because I didn't feel safe and loving with myself, I didn't feel safe being in the relationship. When I eventually came to feel safe within myself, then I no longer needed that relationship. So part of this is understanding the difference between the peace that comes with self-love and knowing that that all of your needs are met and sourced through us, rather than looking externally for someone else, needing someone else, looking for someone else to fill the emptiness. And that when we have that understanding, that everything is sourced through us, we no longer need anyone else. And that in itself creates its own safety zone. Because when we're not feeling whole and complete within ourselves, and we need someone else to fill those roles for us, then that in itself is feels unsafe, if that makes sense.
That's where the 45 pounds came from. Really?
Exactly.
Because your body, you innately know to protect yourself. That's kind of a primal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Geraldine, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Love is it's not as much an emotion as it is a state of being, and a way of existing. When we think of love, actually, we think of the most euphoric states of being of mankind. When we do love, we are able to reach these euphoric states because when we unite with a partner, it's almost as if everything dissolves, everything in the physical dissolves, and you come into this state of bliss, peace, harmony, bliss, unity. And this state, in order to maintain that and bring it into your everyday life, is really the meaning of how to embody love. It's not just a matter of just having a relationship. So how do you cultivate that profound unity with yourself? That has to be reached internally by dissolving all of the parts of you that are dualistic, all the parts that see things as separate, yourself from another, see things as yourself and another. You rather see yourself as part of everything and everything as a part of you. This way of thinking really begins to shift your ability to actually understand what love is. And from that way of holding love, you can emerges compassion, and it emerges an internal peace that cannot be shaken by any external event that happens outside of you. So this is actually where we start going into unconditional love, which is actually something that we should all learn how to do internally before we even begin to enter into any kind of relationship, because otherwise we have imbalanced exchanges with others. We either give more than we receive, or we receive more than we give. And these imbalanced exchanges create a loss of life force in people, both emotionally, physically, mentally, creating confusion, feeding off these ideas that we are separate, not enough, not whole. So becoming and learning how to cultivate that wholeness by coming into that oneness is absolutely essential in becoming a loving being, a loving individual that can then be so full that now has enough to give to another. And really, that's really the only point, because relationships are very challenging. And of course, it requires a high level of compassion, understanding, intuition, all of which are emerging from this unconditional self-love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the issue, though, with a lot of people is at least one of the things that I discovered, a lot of people don't know what unconditional love is. They've never experienced it in their life. And because they've never experienced it, they don't know how to express it. So again, when you're talking about love, actually, for me, what I finally understood about 10 years ago is that love isn't an emotion. That's only one expression of it. Love is actually energy. It is the energy all things are made of. It's the glue that binds everything together. It is all that is. And when we start to really understand that love never left us, it's actually what we're made of. And then once we recognize that, we can start to find it inside of ourselves and understand that the love we feel for other people and other people feel for us is actually a reflection of the love that we have within ourselves. So the more we experience that love within ourselves, the more that is reflected back to us. And so the idea of unconditional love, I think, is really, really advanced for a lot of people, as I said, because they've never experienced it. I mean, I remember growing up with the saying to love each other as God has loved you, but the God I believed in had a big, long list of conditions. So that's the only way I knew how to love. Learning how to love myself unconditionally came with having children, and how much I loved my children with absolute, pure, unconditional love. Loving them that way taught me how to love myself that way. And loving myself that way makes it easier for me to love the rest of humanity that way. So I think, you're right, Geraldine, that the first thing we need to work on is learning how to love ourselves with pure, absolute, unconditional love. And then it's pretty simple to love others that way, and then to experience that being expressed back to us. Um, Joan, I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.
Well, love makes the world go round. So as we're talking, I just hear it going round and round in my head. Love makes the world go round, but love is sometimes hard to grasp because we live in a 3D physical world where it's not run by love here. So the fuel that runs our planet is a lower frequency. It's not on that highest of frequencies. So we're talking about we live on a planet that's a 3D based reality that might be at a vibrational frequency of fear or greed or jealousy, but we're asking to emulate and become part of the highest frequency of the universe. So it's a lot more complex. And so what stands between shifting from that 3D world we're in to the fifth dimensional and higher frequency of love has to do with how we manage to heal and step back and step away from what we've come programmed with. Because let's face it, many of us who speak to the gods and who have always been connected have had past lives as healers, as teachers, as doctors, or whatever women were allowed to do in those days, homeopaths. And we dispensed love all the time for lifetimes, and we're punished for that and lost our lives, lost our wings. I heard a horrible story the other day of a woman who came down and her wings were ripped off. And those are not uncommon stories in our history of being punished for loving humanity. So there is those outside programming that we're learning to heal. It is very possible to heal that completely. Today I did this wing fluffing session where I helped bring those wings back and remember, or doing work that actually physically heals that heart of yours. Because, research has shown that most heart attacks, many of them occur because your heart is breaking. That's the emotion attached to that. So to heal that, we can literally start working with that physical heart and doing visualizations where we could see it as a container that gets full and that is re-healed and rebuilt in a certain way. So I guess what I'm saying is, in order to come up to that level, it's really important to acknowledge what we need to release, which is all that fear that came with that pure loving, because that's what we're here to do. So opening our heart to that. And there's nothing better than that sense of pure love. And
Well, I'd like to fill in for until we get Joan back. Part of, I think, self-love and learning how to have that unconditional love for ourselves first is to understand that we have a love language. And sometimes it's a love language derived from everything we've been exposed to, love stories that we see on TV or we read in books. And then when it comes into real life and we try to incorporate some of those things into our relationships, they don't work. And it's because we have to find our own love language. Not only find our own love language, but understand that our love language is continuously changing. And so that's one of the things I've been incorporating into all of my relationships, not just intimate relationships, but relationships with my children and people that I work with. I understand that although you may have known me all my life or for a big portion of my life, if I haven't told you today what my love language is, I can't expect you to know it. And in those instances where I feel triggered, maybe you said something to me that I didn't like, or maybe it was a tone of voice that you used that I didn't like. Instead of reacting and becoming defensive, I'm now looking at it in a perspective where, you know what? Maybe this person doesn't know my love language. Maybe he or she doesn't know that, you know what, when you use that tone with me, it makes me regret that I'm sitting here and I want to sit with you. I want to enjoy my time with you. Can you please watch that tone? Tomorrow it may be different, especially with women. And I know for myself, going through menopause, one day can be totally different from another. And today I might be offended by something simple, and tomorrow I may not be. It's, nevertheless, when I share my love language with you, it gives us an open playing field so that we can know where to start playing. If I'm having one of those days where maybe things aren't going that well for me, instead of waiting for situations to pop up, I can just let the people that I know that are close to me, you know what? I'm having a weird day today, and just so you know, I might need time alone, or maybe my reactions might be off. So I think it's important to learn our love language and to speak it forth whenever necessary. You know, I may love you and I may hold you in high regard, but maybe it's a joke that I say that really triggers you. Instead of closing off, I would rather have you say, you know what, Gloria, the way you spoke to me or that joke makes me very uncomfortable. Now that I know that, I can really love you and meet you where you're at. So I think that's a great part of learning this unconditional love, is knowing that we have a love language and we can't expect everyone just to know it. We have to share it and be open to receiving that the person that we love, that maybe their love language is a little bit different, and be open to be flexible with that. All right. I don't know what happened with Joan. It looks like we lost Joan. So, Kathy, it looked like you wanted to. You're muted, by the way.
And well, Victoria texted me and their electricity went out, but they'll be back soon. So, but I'd love to talk a little bit about that too, because part of our theme this week was courage, the courage of love. And, you know, all of this is actually, a lot of it's part of Goddess Gloria's work, where you do shadow work, because you, in order to really get to love yourself, you have to integrate all of yourself. And what happens is the outside world mirrors and shows you ways for you to keep seeing that darkness until you do something about it. So that's part of what I think we were talking about with courage and love, because it isn't just courage to be going out there or go to parties or actually, you know, talk to somebody or date. Oh my God. It's like high school. But it's more about the courage to love yourself and integrate all of those parts of yourself, so you show up completely and you're not looking for the other piece of the puzzle. The courage, I think, that's needed is it's so perfect for this discussion, is so perfect for right now, because I see we're in these times of high contrast, and it's very difficult to know the truth. So you have to use yourself and your body and your systems as your own barometer for truth, and know when someone around you is not telling the truth, or if it's not your pathway. And that you can use a pendulum, you can use other tools, but really when you're integrated in yourself, you know the truth, and you know it from this higher perspective. When we talk also about third dimension and fifth dimension, my experience is that right now I'm here talking to you guys, but I'm also an observer of all of this. And I'm consciously the observer. And the observer loves all of it, has no judgment. It's just looking at, it's trying to learn. It's trying to see how to make it a higher profile. It's integrating it, which is what is part of, I think, the opportunity right now during these changing times for us to be in 3D, in the high contrast, but to choose the higher perspective, even if you want to say the bird's eye view, I think that's partially why we love drone footage so much, is we're somewhere in our psyche, we're flying, but we're in it and then also integrating it. So I'd love for someone else, Geraldine, could you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure you've experienced that too.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Actually, that's a really powerful concept, and I was going to share exactly on that point of, what is the integration? I teach a lot about the 0 point. What does it mean to come into the 0 point? The 0 point is the point of non-duality. This is where we come into neutrality, and it's actually the cultivation of neutrality from which true unconditional love emerges, because this is where the filters of separation begin to merge into unity. And I love that you also talked about truth, because how do we know then how to define truth? We live in a very dualistic, very compartmentalized reality. So how do we know truth and discern? So cultivating our intuition is essential. And the cultivation of neutrality is the base in order to create a strong intuition. When our intuition is waved by our emotional state, we can be extremely happy or extremely sad, but emotions come in layers. So we have a lot of layers of emotion. So on the outside, there might be a happy face, but actually the subconscious mind, the subconscious thought, the subconscious belief system and emotions are actually the ones that create our reality. So when we begin to understand those subconscious thoughts and we get to the root of those, we can begin to understand ourselves. So this truth, this level of truth, is unpacking the layers of emotions and programs that we've kind of accumulated over our lifetime from the womb until the age of 7. And essentially this is how we begin to get close to what is true. And the way I define and I teach true, and maybe it can help you identify it, is what is closest to nature. See, and nature has this incredible balance that is inherent as part of its natural design. And that means that things are flowing through life and death, cycles of life and death naturally. Nothing gets upset that it's dying. A leaf doesn't get upset that it's crimpling up for fall. It just goes along with that flow. So if we learn how to imbalance that kind of natural state of flow in our life internally, things have to die, things have to born, we begin to enter into the laws of nature, actually, that transcend this compartmentalized way of seeing things. So this is an invitation of, when you think of unconditional love, what is good for yourself and the whole, not just you self-serving, what you need for you, but you in your partnership, you in your family, you in the community, you in the society. And this is where we start making choices that are a little more conscious and more collectively unconditionally loving.
Wow, that's beautiful. I wanted to talk like a little bit more about the courage, like Kathy said. This is about the courage to love. And in reality, everyone is a mirror for us. Absolutely everyone, especially the ones that irritate us or instigate us to react. Those are really good mirrors for us to stop and reflect on, to look and to make those changes within ourselves. Relationships are a close-up mirror. You get to see deep parts of yourself that maybe you've been in denial of, or maybe you've heard from other people talk about you being stubborn, or maybe other negative things that you don't like and you've denied those. Well, a relationship is a very close-up mirror, and there we can find the beauty of self-love. So if I'm in a relationship with you and I start to find things that I don't like, before I speak my mouth and say those things to you, I need to look at myself and see how those qualities exist within me, because after all, water seeks its own level. We're always in relationship with our equals so that we can change and grow and love together. So it's really easy. If I see something in you and I don't like it, I can just say, oh, forget this person. There are more people on this earth. But a real unconditional, courageous thing to do would be to look at those things that you don't like about that person and make those changes within you. So maybe that person you felt was disrespectful to you. It's a good opportunity to see how maybe you're disrespectful, not just in relationships, maybe in business, maybe with your family, maybe in opportunities. Relationships give us that real close-up look, and that takes a lot of courage to face. Wouldn't you agree, Goddess Joan? You're muted. Oh, it looks like we're having technical musical.
All right, dearest angels, this has been quite an interesting day. Oh my goodness, I have the wrong background. I just, that's pretty funny. I am not Sacred Valley Podcast, everyone. I am Joan of Angels. All right, well, love is, to me, we learn how to manage on this planet. Loving is almost better in some ways for me when I direct it at the plants, the flowers, the angels, the whole universe, and then everyone else gets included with it. I'm reminded of something I learned years ago that was talking about the difference between really being in love or loving. And it was when women were talking about sexuality. There was a book about for women about don't marry the first person you sleep with, and if he's the one you want to marry, don't sleep with him. It's maybe off track, but what that taught me was the following: that we that women have this hormone in our body that's programmed for love. It's our oxytocin. It's the same feeling we feel when we're breastfeeding that Victoria started out with. When you're breastfeeding your children, that feeling of love is just, it's a hormonal flush where you would love a toad. You'd love the postman. You would love the janitor. You would love all beings because you're in that unified field of consciousness that's brought on by that nursing feeling. And there's nothing like it in the world. And we love everything. We love them whether they're the right person for us. That's why the book was so interesting. It was like that hormone comes and you so love that it's not like your logical mind knows if they're good for you or not. It's that complete feeling of love ruling the universe. And so how do we naturally allow that feeling to sweep our body? What kinds of things can we do in our life that allow that oxytocin to be released in such a flush of universal love that embraces it all? I suppose that's what I'm thinking about at this particular moment, of what it is in me that then I feel like this weekend I was at the Conscious Life Expo. The vibrations around were so high that I walked into a room and could feel probably that same oxytocin rush. I'm just going to give it a name to identify with it. It's like getting into that energy of it, a Kundalini experience, or being with others of like mind that you're so in love with it all. It's not them. It's that love that we can tap into. And when we tap into that, we become the avatars. We become such a light beam of radiance that we heal the field. Hundreds of thousands of people around us can be healed through that. We all have that. If there was a way to can that oxytocin, I would say go for it, to be able to have a dose of it all the time to live in that reality. Anyway, those are the thoughts of loving that are coming to me, like there is that space. My mother died and I held her hand and I watched spirit take her. I felt the love of the universe, even though the loss of my mother. We're blessed to have that. Not, and I think the animals feel that love too. I watched this elephant carrying a little baby coyote. It wasn't a coyote, a little baby leopard in his trunk. And apparently he'd been walking across the dry desert, and this leopard mother was walking with her child who couldn't make it. The elephant knew that without his help carrying that baby to the water. And so there you see an elephant and a lion or a leopard walking together, and the elephant is being entrusted to carry this baby. a baby leopard. It was so moving.
That's really, am I muted? Okay, that's really beautiful, Jonah. And that's kind of reminding me of a lot of the videos we've been seeing, interestingly enough, since 2012, how the love on this planet has been expanding. And it almost feels like even people love their children differently than they used to. And animals expressing love more than they used to. And it's like seeing the videos of the lion and the guy who raised the lion, and they're wrestling on the ground and having a great time together, and the tigers and the dogs that are best friends, and really seeing that there is, there's so much pain and suffering that's happening in the world right now, and there's so much love that's happening in the world right now, and it's really where we put our focus. The love is there, and it's accessible, and is the reality that wants to be expressed through all of us. As I said back in the beginning, love is all that is, and anything that isn't love it comes from the belief that there isn't enough love, and that not even knowing it through our own beliefs, we've cut ourselves off from it. And so while I was having the power outage internet issues that took me offline for a few minutes, and I think that all of you were talking about this, which is that the way to find that love within ourselves is a willingness to process all of the stories that we have about ourselves and others that are not loving. And when we're willing to do the work to dive into our stuff, as a friend of mine said years ago, the best gems are in the shit. So when we're willing to dive into our own stuff and process our own unloving beliefs and practices, and sometimes they're what I call hand-me-down beliefs. They could have come down generation upon generation upon generation to where we are now, a willingness to look at all of it and question all of it. And if it's not loving, we got to process it. And then once we do, it's like, oh yeah. Oh, that's where the love is. Oh, we never did get left behind. Oh, I never was separate from love. Oh, love has always been there. And wow, once you feel that, you can actually have that high that you feel about another person. You could actually have that high about yourself, which is really amazing when you can get to that space. And that's why at the beginning, when I was talking about the difference between self-love and arrogance, they're two completely different things. They're almost on complete opposite spectrums of the human experience. And that the more we feel that love within ourselves, the more we can express that outward and get to the point where we love everything and everyone. And because I lean more toward the spiritual teaching, that's what Yeshua meant when he said to love your enemies. We actually have that capacity within us to love each other that way. And all of it's about the relationship with ourselves. The more we do our inner work, and I'm pretty sure Goddess Gloria talked about this, the more we do our inner work, the more we find the love within ourselves, and the more we're able to express it outward, and the more we're able to receive it. And the more we give, the more we receive, until that becomes the entire collective reality. And no one ever feels a loss of love ever again, because we know that it is all that is, and it's always and ever present. We just need to learn how to find it and connect to it within ourselves.
Wow, that's beautiful, Goddess Victoria. I love how you touched on really looking into our own shit, right? Our own issues and our shortcomings. And when we can really honestly dive into those full of courage and say, okay, yeah, maybe I'm a jerk sometimes, or maybe I'm an asshole sometimes. What that does is it opens up compassion for the jerks and the assholes in our life, because we're the same. So if I feel someone's a jerk to me, I can no longer get mad, because they're just showing me who I am. And I know the times that I've been accused of being a jerk, I didn't know. I didn't know I was being a jerk. The people who loved me enough let me know. Other people walked away. But that's another way that we can jump in with courage is, instead of getting mad and looking at that person that we love and starting to find their shortcomings, when we find those shortcomings in ourselves, then we realize, wow, we're the same. And in those times where you didn't know that you had those shortcomings, how would you want to have been spoken to? Speak to the people that you love in the same way. If we point out those shortcomings and say, you, and you're this and you're that, that separates us. But if we come together and say, I see these qualities in you, they're the same as me, and they don't feel good when they're addressed to me. Let's work on not doing that to each other anymore. And now we can really, just like Goddess Victoria said, now we really find love, because we're not just expecting those ourselves or other people to be perfect. We're saying, hey, you know what? I've got these dark sides and you've got these dark sides. Let's still love each other and not do that to each other. And that now we can have a whole new playing field of love. Right? Let's bring it back to Goddess Kathy.
Thank you, Goddess Gloria. What I wanted to say is that we are more powerful than we really take responsibility for. And we can start each day with calling in the frequencies we want and magnetize more love to ourselves. So about 20 years ago, I was working with this incredible Indigenous woman named Judith Lightfeather. And she kept talking about the great central sun's heart presence. And I, right away, when I heard it, was like, oh, I'm connecting to that too. So I start out the morning asking, requesting, demanding, proclaiming, whatever words you want to call it, that I connect with the frequencies of infinite love and the great central sun's heart presence. And I just wanted to recommend that to you to consider trying it and seeing if that doesn't change the whole frequency of your day. Because these are the times right now for us to choose the scenarios that we're in, and we are in a play. It is my belief that we are in a play, and you can set the stage with frequencies that draw more and more love to you. Just like what Joan had said about being in a room and feeling the frequency from it, we can call that in as our preference in every instant. We just have to be aware and choose. So with that, who wants to follow on that?
Gosh,
Okay.
so you're making me think of the law of attraction says that what we put out in the universe is what we get back. We ask for eggs scrambled, we expect eggs scrambled. But if we ask if we're amorphous, we don't quite get what we want. But what, Kathy, you reminded me of, the truth is that our thoughts are real. Our words are real. Our visions are real because they're going out in the universe. If we envision and hold true to that ascension timeline, to the fact that we are loving, kind beings, that we are going to thrive, that all is well, we literally have that ability to change that consciousness field. And so honestly, as a collective, if we all say today, we are going to continue to be a loving collective, all we do is based in love, we only see pure love, then we're actually creating a universe that will reflect that back to us. So maybe we're just 5 people here, but each of us has our people out there, and then all of you have your people out there. We can literally change the field of consciousness today, right now, by shifting our thoughts to being that radiant beam of light and love and knowing nothing else. Like, one of the things I love talking to Victoria, I'm staying at her house now, and she always gets the subject back to how we can change our thoughts and the new earth and the new reality and the new way. And I might come out of my room and say, well, this and this and this is happening. And she'll get it right back to the new earth, the new world, how it's changing and transforming. And so watching our thoughts and words and not accepting what we see around us as real, because it's really not, it's what's being created to delude us. What we read in the media, what we hear on the radio may or may not be true. The only reality is what the world we are creating now. And I had a great opportunity to listen to Frank Jacob. He talks a lot about the timeline and the timeline of the looking glass. And what was so amazing is he ended his presentation, which was full of doom and gloom. Okay, doom and gloom. This is what they're doing. This is what they've always done. And he ends it with, this is what we're doing. This is what our field of loving consciousness can change. It can change all of that. It could change all negative intentions, all, quote, things that look evil into the light. And so I believe in not only the possibility of miracles, my loves, but the probability that we as a core group, the higher view, what are we doing? We're looking at this loving universe. So let's create it. Let's clap all of our hands. I mean, that energy of the Conscious Life Expo, 15,000 people came together to see this new world. Come on now. I want to see all you on screen with me. Come on up. We're a collective. Shout out your thoughts, my friends. It's like, oh my God, we can do this. That's why we're doing it together, because we're stronger.
That's right. Yeah, and some of us were there. Goddess Gloria was at the Conscious Life Expo. I was there speaking and talking about my new book, which is all about creating new earth, and that we're creating this new love-based reality. I've been talking about this love-based reality we're creating for the last, I don't know, when I first discovered it about 12 years ago, that we're moving out of a reality that's based in fear, and we're moving into a new reality based in love. And it starts inside every single one of us. And it's possible. I know. I see peace on earth. I see heaven on earth. I see love for all that is. I see it as clear as my neighbor's roof out my window. That is real to me. That future of earth where love is all that is, and the collective human heart is healed of all the pain that came from living in fear. That's just as real to me as anything else. And I know, I mean, we've talked about, peace on earth. Once a year, we sing our Peace on Earth songs. That is real. It just needs us to manifest it. All of us. And that Conscious Life Expo with 15,000 people was a great start. And I know these conversations are happening all over the world. That's the reason we created Higher View, was to get as many people as possible into these loving conversations that we have every week. And so everybody's watching, tell your friends, please, because the reason we created this show was to raise the consciousness of humanity. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Geraldine, do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, just one last thing about love that I want to remind you guys. The biology of love is actually one of the most powerful healing energies that we can embody. And I just want to mention, for any of you that have pain in your body, dealing with illness, whether it's emotional or physical, coming into the feeling of love, embodying that love in your body heals the body. And we could talk about that for hours, but please come into that state of love. Fall in love with yourself so deeply that you become the source of all that you require. And that becomes a fountain and a beacon of light to the external. So this is just my closing thought. In the courage of love, the courage to love every aspect of yourself that you are ashamed of, that you hate, that you reject, that you are not okay with, is the key to freedom and sovereignty. So I just want to invite everyone to that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it does take a lot of courage to love ourselves. And I was actually being reminded, just briefly, because we're getting ready to close out, of how so many of us have what I call the inner bully, inner critic, pick the name, but how many people treat themselves in a way and talk to themselves in a way they would never talk to someone else. And so when we talk about, having, treating other people the way we would want to be treated, let's come back to treating ourselves the way we want to be treated. Treat ourselves the way we want other people to treat us. And learn how to have those loving conversations with ourselves rather than beat ourselves up. And that does take courage to completely flip the script, especially if you've gone through your whole life doing nothing but berating yourself. It requires every time you berate yourself, catch yourself and say, is this loving? Am I being loving to myself? Would I ever talk to another person the way that I'm talking to myself? And that is a great place to start.
Wow, I love that, Goddess Victoria. I just wanted to add one more thing before we go. I want to remind you that we are here to love. Nothing else matters. When we leave our bodies, the only thing that we can take with us is how we made other people feel and how others made us feel. And like Goddess Victoria says, make everything about love. Just pause and think about how you can be loving in that situation. And maybe something that might help is, what would God do? What would Goddess do in this situation? All there is love. Thank you.
Well, I want to.
Goddess Victoria is muted.
Oh,
Oh, you muted yourself again.
Kathy, you had one last thing you wanted to say? Or was it Kathy that was talking? Oh, you're muted too.
Go ahead. You're
Oh,
right.
no, I was just going to close it out, but it looked like you had something else you wanted to say before we close
No,
out.
I just wanted to thank everyone that's on and in the chat, and thank them so much for joining us in this really important conversation, because this is how we change the world. This is how we bring in the new earth, and we become self-actualized. And we're going to do it all together. So thank you all so much. And please share if you feel that this could help your loved ones as well, because this is the theme really for this until 2030. We're going to have to keep reminding ourselves and reminding others about the path to love and the courage to join everyone on the path to love. So thank you all for being here with us.
Anyone else? Joan, do you have some last minute thoughts you want to add?
So, in the words of the Beatles, God, I want to see you all as we're saying goodbye. I don't want to just be alone up here, but all we need is love. Remember that song?
All we need is love.
No. Listen to
All
the
we
music,
need is
guys.
love.
Dance to the rhythm.
Love is all we need.
I love you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. We hope to see you soon and love you, and I hope you love us too.
Okay. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time on The Higher View.